November 14th, 1942, 11 p.m. South Pacific Ocean, the Slot off the coast of Guadalcanal. Air temperature 82 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity 90%. Complete darkness, new moon. Visibility less than 300 feet. On the bridge of the battleship USS Washington stands Rear Admiral Willis Lee. He's 54 years old, tall, lean, wearing glasses. He doesn't look like your typical naval admiral. 18 years ago, this man won 5 gold medals at the Antwerp Olympics, shooting. He was America's finest marksman. Now he commands the 2 most powerful battleships in the Pacific Fleet on the most important night of his life. In 17 minutes, a battle will begin that will go down in history as the last classic artillery duel between battleships. And almost no one will ever know about it. August 1942. American Marines land on Guadalcanal, an obscure island in the Solomon Islands archipelago. The reason is simple. The Japanese are building an airfield there. If they finish it, their bombers will cut off Australia from the United States. The war in the Pacific will be lost. The Marines capture the unfinished airfield and name it Henderson Field after a fallen pilot. A 6-month nightmare begins. During the day, American aircraft from Henderson control the sea. Japanese ships cannot approach. At night come Japanese destroyers and cruisers. Quick raids, troop landings, airfield bombardments, departure before dawn. The Americans call it the Tokyo Express. The Marines on the island hold on by their fingernails. Malaria, dysentery, constant attacks by Japanese infantry. Supplies arrive irregularly. The key to survival is Henderson Field. As long as it's operational, there's hope. The Imperial Japanese Navy understands this. On November 12, 1942, they make a decision. Destroy the airfield with massive bombardment from battleship guns and land major reinforcements. The plan is simple and brutal. 2 battleships will approach at night and turn Henderson into a lunar landscape with 14-inch shells. Without the airfield, the Americans on the island are doomed. On November 13th, Japanese battleships Hiei and Kirishima enter the slot. They're met by American cruisers and destroyers. A chaotic night battle begins. Ships fire at point-blank range, 2 to 3 kilometers. Burning vessels illuminate the sea. The Americans lose 2 cruisers. The Japanese lose Hiei, damaged, finished off by aircraft in the morning. But this is only the beginning. On November 14th, the Japanese dispatch a convoy. 11 transports carrying 10,000 soldiers, tanks, and artillery. Escort, cruisers, and destroyers. During the day, American dive bombers from Henderson and the carrier Enterprise sink 7 transports. But 4 break through. Japanese command makes a decision. Tonight, the battleship Kirishima, with cruisers and destroyers, will destroy the airfield. Tomorrow morning, the transports will unload troops. Guadalcanal will be retaken. The Americans know these plans. Intelligence, radio intercepts, observers on island shores. Admiral William Halsey, commander of the South Pacific Theater, sends everything he has. 2 battleships, Washington and South Dakota. 4 destroyers. Commander, Rear Admiral Willis Lee. Willis Augustus Lee was born in 1888 in Kentucky, a military family. His father was a Civil War veteran. In 1908, Lee enters the Naval Academy at Annapolis. He studies well, but not brilliantly. Class of 1908, 71st out of 201. But in marksmanship, he's the best. Rifle, pistol, any weapon. Perfect instinct for ballistics. He feels wind, distance, target movement instinctively. 1920, Olympics in Antwerp. Lee joins the U.S. shooting team. Result: 5 gold medals, 1 silver, 1 bronze. 7 medals at a single Olympics, a record that would stand for decades. Lee returns a hero. But fame doesn't interest him. He returns to the fleet and immerses himself in work. The 1930s. Lee specializes in gunnery and a new technology: radar. He understands future naval battles will be decided not by courage, but by accuracy of fire and target detection technology. While other admirals view radar skeptically, Lee studies every technical report. He personally knows the engineers developing the systems. He understands radar's capabilities and limitations better than anyone in the fleet. 1941. Pearl Harbor. War. Lee receives assignment to the Battleship Washington. This is the newest ship in the American fleet. Launched in 1940, 9 16-inch guns. Speed 28 knots. Armor up to 16 inches thick. And most important, the Mark III radar, capable of detecting large ships at distances up to 22 miles in total darkness. Lee personally trains the crew. He conducts drills day and night, especially at night. He forces the gunners to fire using radar data without seeing the target with their eyes. Traditional naval officers consider this strange. A real sailor shoots seeing his enemy. Lee doesn't argue, he just trains the crew. By November 1942, Washington is the most prepared battleship for night combat in the entire Pacific. On November 14th, Lee receives orders: intercept the Japanese fleet off Guadalcanal. He knows the enemy's composition: Battleship Kirishima, heavy cruisers Atago and Takao, light cruisers, destroyers. 14 ships total. He has 2 battleships, 4 destroyers, 6 against 14. Lee doesn't object. He studies charts, weather, calculations. New moon, darkness, narrow strait. Perfect conditions for radar. USS Washington and USS South Dakota proceed in column formation. Washington ahead, South Dakota following. Behind them, 4 destroyers. South Dakota is newer than Washington, launched in 1941. Similar armament, slightly better armor. But there's a problem. South Dakota was designed for daylight combat. Her electrical systems are complex but vulnerable to overloads. The crew is less experienced in night operations. South Dakota's captain is Thomas Gatch, a capable officer, but he lacks Lee's experience in night combat. On the evening of November 14th, the formation enters the slot from the south. Ahead lies Savo Island. 3 months ago, disaster struck here. Japanese cruisers destroyed an American formation at night. 4 heavy cruisers sunk in 30 minutes. Over 1,000 dead. American sailors call the strait Iron Bottom Sound. Dozens of ships rest on the bottom. Tonight, more will be added. 10 p.m. Washington's radar picks up contacts. Range 19 miles. The Japanese fleet is entering the strait from the north. Lee is calm. He expected this. The plan is simple. Proceed forward. Let the Japanese close to effective firing range. Destroy the battleship Kirishima before the Japanese understand what's happening. 10:48 p.m. Range has closed to 11 miles. The Japanese still don't see the Americans. Absolute darkness. Ahead of the American column are 4 destroyers. Their mission? Attack with torpedoes. Create a diversion. 11 p.m. The destroyers are detected by Japanese ships. Searchlights flare. Battle begins. Japanese cruisers and destroyers unleash a torrent of fire. The U.S. destroyers respond, launch torpedoes. 2 destroyers are destroyed almost instantly. 2 more are damaged, withdraw from combat. But they've accomplished their mission. The Japanese are focused on the destroyers. They don't see the battleships. Washington and South Dakota continue forward. Speed, 26 knots. Range to the Japanese, 7.5 miles. 11:10 p.m. On South Dakota, something happens that no one expected. A circuit breaker trips. Electrical overload. Cause? Short circuit from nearby Japanese shell explosions. In 3 seconds, South Dakota loses all power. Radar off. Fire control system off. Radio communications dead. The ship is blind and mute. The crew frantically tries to restore power. They switch to backup generators. After 90 seconds, some systems return. But 90 seconds in battle is an eternity. South Dakota finds herself 3 miles from Japanese cruisers. The Japanese see her silhouette against the burning destroyers. Searchlights sweep the battleship. She's lit up like a parade ground. Japanese ships open fire. Cruiser Otago, Cruiser Takao, destroyers, all fire on South Dakota. Shells rain down. 8-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch. Hundreds of hits. The armor holds. South Dakota was built to take punishment. Shells penetrate superstructures, knock out anti-aircraft guns, kill men on open decks, but don't penetrate the citadel. South Dakota blindly returns fire. Main battery fires, but without radar and fire control, it's shooting blind. On the bridge, Captain Gatch understands. A few more minutes of this fire, and the ship will be destroyed. He orders a turn, withdrawal from the barrage. South Dakota turns, tries to escape into darkness. Japanese ships celebrate. They're certain they're destroying an American battleship. Searchlights track her. Guns continue firing. The Japanese force commander, Vice Admiral Nobutake Kondo, aboard the cruiser Otago, observes the battle. Everything is going according to plan. The American battleship is retreating. The path to Henderson is open. None of the Japanese know that in the darkness, 5 miles to the west, there's a second battleship. And on her bridge stands a man who sees them all on his radar screen. 11:16 p.m. USS Washington proceeds at full speed parallel to the Japanese column. On the radar screen, Lee sees the entire battle picture. He sees South Dakota, illuminated by searchlights, sees the Japanese ships, sees South Dakota taking hit after hit. The temptation is great. Immediately open fire, help his comrades. Lee doesn't hurry. He waits for the perfect position. Washington's crew is at full battle readiness. Main battery loaded. Radar operators feed coordinates to the fire control system. The computers are mechanical, room-sized. They calculate trajectories accounting for wind speed, temperature, Earth's rotation. This is the most complex ballistic problem. But Lee has trained the crew for months. They work like clockwork. 11:17 p.m. Range to Kirishima, 8,400 meters. Perfect position. The Japanese battleship shows clearly on radar. She's proceeding on a straight course, not maneuvering. Lee gives the order. 9 16-inch guns traverse, barrels elevate. First salvo. The sound is deafening even through ear protection. The ship shudders. Tongues of flame burst from the barrels 60 feet into the air. Night turns to day for a second. 9 shells fly toward the target. Each weighs 2,700 pounds. Velocity, 2,700 feet per second. Time of flight, 14 seconds. On Kirishima, no one understands what's happening. They're focused on South Dakota, which is retreating. The first salvo strikes Kirishima. 3 hits. Shells penetrate armor like paper. Explosions inside the hull. Fire, debris, death. On the Japanese battleship's bridge, panic. Where's the firing coming from? Where's the enemy? Searchlights try to find the target. Light beams search the darkness. But Washington is too far away and running dark. The searchlights shine into emptiness. 11:18 p.m. Washington's second salvo. 9 more shells. This time, the radar operators have refined the aim. Hits are more precise. 4 shells strike Kirishima. 1 penetrates a main battery turret. Magazine explosion. Turret destroyed. Another shell hits near the engine room. Penetrates the armored deck, explodes inside. Boiler rooms flooded. Kirishima loses speed. 11:19 p.m. Third salvo. 11:20 p.m. Fourth salvo. Lee methodically destroys the Japanese battleship. Each salvo, 9 shells. Each salvo corrected by radar data. Washington's crew works flawlessly. Main battery rate of fire, 1 salvo every 40 seconds, faster than most battleships. In 7 minutes, Washington fires 75 shells from the main battery. At least 9 strike Kirishima. The Japanese battleship becomes a burning wreck, decks ablaze, guns silent. The ship slowly turns, loses control. Japanese cruisers try to help. Atago and Takao open fire in the direction of Washington's gun flashes, but they're firing nearly blind. No hits. Washington responds. Secondary battery, 5-inch guns, engages the cruisers. Several hits. Light damage, but the Japanese understand. They're facing a battleship they cannot see. 11:24 p.m. Vice Admiral Kondo on Atago's bridge assesses the situation. Kirishima is burning and out of action. An unknown American battleship possesses accuracy of fire that Kondo has never seen in night combat. The mission was simple: destroy Henderson Field. But without Kirishima, it's impossible. Cruisers don't have guns large enough to destroy concrete fortifications. Transports with troops still await unloading. But without suppressing the airfield, aviation will destroy them in the morning. Kondo makes a decision. 11:30 p.m. The Japanese fleet receives orders to withdraw. Cruisers and destroyers turn. They try to cover Kirishima with smokescreens, take her in tow. But the battleship is too damaged. Water floods compartments. The list increases. Kirishima's crew evacuates to destroyers. At 3:25 a.m., November 15th, Kirishima capsizes and sinks north of Savo Island. Of the 1,400-man crew, about 200 perish. Washington ceases fire at 11:35 p.m. The enemy is withdrawing. Pursuit in narrow waters at night is risky. Lee orders withdrawal from the strait to the south. South Dakota follows, damaged but afloat. The battle is over. It lasted 23 minutes. Dawn, November 15th, 1942. 4 Japanese transports still attempt to land troops on Guadalcanal. Without battleship cover, they beach themselves and begin unloading. At 6 a.m., American dive bombers and fighters take off from Henderson Field. By noon, all 4 transports are destroyed or burning on the beach. About 2,000 soldiers manage to land, but without heavy weapons, artillery, or most supplies. The Japanese attempt to retake Guadalcanal has failed. Aboard Washington, the crew tallies ammunition expenditure. Expended: 75 main battery rounds, 16-inch. 107 secondary battery rounds, 5-inch. Damage received: minimal. Several shrapnel hits from near-miss Japanese shells. 1 man wounded. South Dakota is more seriously damaged. 42 hits from shells ranging from 5-inch to 8-inch. 38 men killed, 60 wounded. But the ship is afloat and can proceed under her own power. Both battleships depart for base at New Caledonia for repairs. On Guadalcanal, the Marines heard the battle all night. The horizon lit with gun flashes. The thunder of guns rolled across the water. In the morning, they learn the Japanese fleet has withdrawn. The airfield is intact. They've survived another night. December 1942. American newspapers are full of stories about South Dakota. Headlines: Battleship that took the hit. South Dakota repels Japanese attack. Heroic ship saves Guadalcanal. Captain Gatch becomes a hero. He gives interviews, his photographs on front pages. Washington is barely mentioned. Military censorship conceals details. Radar technology is classified. The Americans don't want the Japanese to understand how effective radar is in night combat. Admiral Lee doesn't object. He's not seeking fame. His job is sinking enemy ships. The rest doesn't matter. But inside the fleet, everyone knows the truth. Battle analysis shows South Dakota played the role of unwitting decoy. The Japanese concentrated on her, and Washington got the opportunity to fire without interference. But the decisive factor was Washington's accuracy of fire. 9 hits from 75 rounds fired. That's 12% effectiveness. For night combat at 5-mile range, this is phenomenal. Normal battleship gunnery effectiveness in daylight combat, 3 to 5%. Washington in darkness shot more accurately than most ships in daylight. The reason? Radar and crew training. The Japanese also analyzed the battle. Their conclusions are troubling. Command report: the enemy possesses the ability to conduct accurate fire in conditions of total darkness. Our searchlights and optical instruments are useless against an invisible enemy. Development of our own radar systems is necessary. But for Japan, it's already too late. The technological lag in radar is 2 to 3 years. The Americans are installing radar on all major ships. Every subsequent night battle will end the same way. November 15, 1942, became the turning point of the Guadalcanal campaign. After that night, the Japanese never again attempted to land major reinforcements. The Tokyo Express continued operating, but delivered only small groups of soldiers and supplies. The Americans gradually built up forces on the island. By December, Marine strength had grown to 40,000 men. The Japanese, cut off from supply, died of starvation and disease faster than in combat. In February 1943, Japanese command decided to evacuate Guadalcanal. The operation was conducted by destroyer night runs. About 11,000 emaciated soldiers were evacuated. The battle for Guadalcanal was over. American victory. Losses on both sides were enormous. United States lost 24 ships sunk, approximately 7,000 killed, over 1,000 aircraft. Japan lost 38 ships sunk, approximately 30,000 killed, most from disease and starvation, over 1,500 aircraft. But the strategic significance of victory is immense. This is the first major ground victory of the United States over Japan. The myth of Japanese Army invincibility is shattered. Initiative in the Pacific passes to the United States. The long path of island hopping to Japan begins. And the night battle of November 14th to 15th was the critical moment. If the Japanese had destroyed Henderson Field, the campaign's outcome might have been different. USS Washington saved not just an airfield, she saved the entire course of the war in the Pacific. After Guadalcanal, Washington continues service in the Pacific. 1943, operations supporting landings in the Solomon Islands, bombardment of shore installations, carrier escort duty. June 1944, Battle of the Philippine Sea, the largest carrier battle in history. Washington, as part of the battleship force, screens carriers from possible Japanese fleet attack. The Japanese don't risk direct engagement. Their aviation is destroyed by American fighters. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, as American pilots call this battle. Washington doesn't fire a single main battery round. The era of battleships is ending. The future belongs to carriers. October 1944, Battle of Leyte Gulf. The last major battleship engagement. Washington participates in the night battle in Surigao Strait. But this isn't her battle. American battleships form a line and methodically destroy Japanese ships. A slaughter, not a duel. 1945. Washington supports landings on Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Bombards Japanese fortifications. Repels kamikaze attacks. August 1945. Japan's surrender. September 1945. Washington enters Tokyo Bay as part of occupation forces. The war is over. 1946 to 1947. Washington makes several cruises, participates in exercises. But the world has changed. The era of big gunships is finished. The future belongs to carriers, atomic submarines, missiles. 1947. USS Washington is decommissioned and placed in reserve. 1960. Stricken from the register. The ship is sold for scrap for $759,000. Broken up in 1961. Not a single North Carolina or South Dakota-class ship was preserved as a museum. All were cut up for scrap. Only photographs, documents, and veterans' memories remain. After Guadalcanal, Admiral Willis Lee becomes one of the key figures in the Pacific Fleet. He commands battleship formations in all major operations. His expertise in radar and night combat is invaluable. Lee writes manuals on night gunnery, trains commanders, implements new tactics. He's modest, taciturn, avoids the press. Officers respect him for professionalism, sailors for fairness. He has an unusual habit. He often goes down to engineering spaces, talks with mechanics. Admirals usually don't do this, but Lee wants to understand how every ship system works. 1945, March. Operation to capture Okinawa, the last major landing before invasion of Japan proper. Lee commands the battleship group that will screen the landing forces. August 25, 1945. The war is already over. Surrender signed. Lee is aboard his flagship, the battleship USS Wyoming, in Casco Bay, Maine. He's planning ship redeployment for Japan's occupation. Around midnight, he goes to sleep. On the morning of August 25th, his aide finds him dead in his cabin. Heart attack. Lee was 57 years old. Autopsy shows massive myocardial infarction. Death was instantaneous, in his sleep. Doctors say years of strain, stress, responsibility. His heart gave out. Buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Simple ceremony. Family, several admirals, honor guard. Newspapers write obituaries, mention Olympic medals, naval service. But details of Guadalcanal are still classified. Ordinary Americans don't know this man saved a key battle of the war. Decades later, historians call Lee one of the most underrated admirals of World War II. He never sought fame. He did his job, and he did it flawlessly. The night battle of November 14th to 15th, 1942 proved one simple truth. Technology decides wars. Radar changed naval warfare as radically as gunpowder changed land warfare. Before radar, night naval battles were chaos. Ships fired at enemy gun flashes, at silhouettes against the moon or burning ships. Accuracy was minimal. Radar gave the ability to see through darkness. The system worked simply. Radar emits radio waves. Waves reflect off metallic objects and return. Time delay indicates distance. Antenna direction indicates bearing. Early shipboard radars were primitive. Range 9 to 12 miles. Accuracy low. But it was enough. By 1942, American radars had become more sophisticated. The Mark III radar installed on Washington could detect battleships at 22 miles, determine course and speed. But most important, radar data fed directly to the fire control system. Mechanical computers calculated trajectories. Guns aimed automatically. Gunners no longer aimed by eye. They fired at coordinates on a screen. This required a new type of thinking. Old naval officers didn't trust technology. They wanted to see the enemy. Lee understood. The future belonged to those who trusted instruments. He trained crews for months, firing in darkness at invisible targets. Trust in radar, in computers, in technology. Result: 12% hits in night combat. Phenomenal accuracy. After Guadalcanal, all American major ships receive radar. New models become increasingly sophisticated. The Japanese try to catch up, but their radar industry lags by years. Their radars are inferior in range, accuracy, reliability. Every night battle ends in Japanese fleet defeat. November 1943, Battle of Cape St. George. American cruisers with radar destroy a Japanese force in darkness. March 1943, Battle of the Bismarck Sea. American aviation uses radar for night attacks on Japanese convoy. October 1944, Battle of Surigao Strait. American battleships with radar destroy a Japanese force without seeing it. Technology doesn't just level the playing field, it provides absolute advantage. And this applies not only to radar. American industry produces more ships, aircraft, tanks than Japan and Germany combined. American science creates the atomic bomb, radar, computers, penicillin. World War II is the first war where technological superiority decides the outcome as much as soldier courage. USS Washington symbolizes this superiority. Ship, crew, commander, everything worked as a single mechanism. Training, discipline, technology. Result: victory. Today, few know about USS Washington. Ask someone on the street about World War II battleships, they'll name USS Missouri, the ship where Japan's surrender was signed. Maybe they'll mention USS Arizona, sunk at Pearl Harbor, now a memorial. USS Iowa, a museum ship, preserved to this day. Washington was cut up for scrap in 1961, not preserved. Her achievement was classified during the war. After the war, forgotten. South Dakota got all the glory. A beautiful story. Ship took the hit, survived, saved her comrades. Washington did the real work, destroyed an enemy battleship, but did it from darkness, invisibly. The press loves heroic stories. Lone ship against superior forces, wounded but unbroken. Washington doesn't fit this narrative. She wasn't wounded, wasn't surrounded. She methodically shot up the enemy from safe distance. It's effective, but not romantic. Admiral Lee didn't give interviews, didn't seek fame. He was a professional, not a showman. After his death, there was no one to promote Washington's story. For decades, historians concentrated on other battles. Midway, the turning point. Coral Sea, the first carrier battle. Leyte, the largest naval engagement. Guadalcanal is mentioned, but more in the context of land fighting. Naval battles around the island are a footnote. Only in the last 20 to 30 years have historians begun to reassess the significance of the night battle of November 14th to 15th. Documents declassified, Japanese archives opened, data from both sides can be compared. Analysis shows, without Washington, the battle for Guadalcanal might have been lost. If Kirishima had destroyed Henderson Field, the Japanese would have landed reinforcements. The Marines might have been thrown into the sea. Loss of Guadalcanal would have meant loss of initiative in the Pacific. The war would have dragged on. One ship, one battle, 23 minutes. Changed history.